Keanne Hogue from NCMEP for opening remarks and introductions. Keanne?
Thank you, Susan. Hi, I'm Keanne Hogue from, as Susan said, from the North Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, along with my colleague, Eric Taylor, Dean Hettenbach of Georgia MEP, and Danny Norman of Tennessee MEP, as well as representing the other MEP centers in the Southeast. And we are very, very excited to bring you this webinar today, this panel on how to succeed as a supplier in the electric vehicle industry. But before we get into that, I just really briefly wanted to go over a little bit about who we are. You've heard on the last slide when I was introducing us a lot of talk about this MEP or that MEP. And so we are part of a national program called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. It's the Hollings MEP. And what it was created to do is to provide comprehensive solutions to small and medium-sized manufacturers that are going to help them grow and advance the competitiveness of U.S. manufacturing. The MEP was created in 1988, and it is located in the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is part of the United States Department of Commerce. And as the map on the right of the screen indicates, there is an MEP center in every state and Puerto Rico, and they provide solutions for manufacturers that are uniquely tailored to the needs of that manufacturer. What brings us here today is that, as we all know, what came out of the pandemic is everyone suddenly knows what a supply chain is. And so the federal government had several acts and executive orders that specifically were designed to bolster the supply chain of the country and called out MEP as a way to help manufacturers to strengthen their supply chains. And so each MEP center has a program focused on supply chain and making supplier matches and just advancing and bolstering the supply chain in the country. And in the Southeast, we took a specific interest in the EV sector because we have a strong automotive presence in the Southeast, and many of those are moving into EVs, and there's a lot of interest in how to become a supplier to that sector. This is our first webinar about the EV sector, and we intend for there to be a few more. And so now I am going to turn it over to Danny, who will introduce our panelists.
Great. Thank you so much, Keanne. And we are very excited to have everyone on the call today, as well as excited to have these distinguished panelists. We hope to have a great, well-rounded panelist. So we were able to find folks from academia, from industry, and from the consulting world. And so we're very excited again to have these gentlemen on the call today. We'll let them introduce themselves. If you want to connect with them individually, we're going to send out these these slides, which they have live links on here, their names. You can also, if you're tech savvy, scan the QR codes that you see, and we're going to post this, I believe, Keanne, if I'm not wrong, at the end of the presentation as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Right. We're going to give each panelist just a few minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll go through. We've got some, as Keanne said, we're really interested in EV startups moving in, incumbent OEMs producing more and more EVs. So we've thought really hard about what questions should we ask. We've got some questions prepared, but we also invite you, as you listen in, to think of questions that you have, and we'll welcome those at the end of our time today. All right. So first off, I'll let Jeff Foster, CEO, President of Core Technology, introduce himself.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Jeff Foster. I'm the CEO and President of Core Technology Molding Corporation. We're located in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is our 18th year in business. And we actually started making EV chargers for BMW in 2012. So we've got over 10 years of experience in the EV market. We have customers at BMW manufacturing, as well as Volvo Cars, which is in the Charleston area of South Carolina. And one of our newest customers is Toyota EV down in Liberty. So these are some of our customers on the EV side. Again, we've been doing EV parts for over 10 years now. Thank you.
Very good, Jeff. Thank you so much for being on the call today.
Sure.
And next we have Simon Buderath, principal at P3 Consulting.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the chance to be on the panel today. So my name is Simon. I'm with P3 since 16 years, originally from Germany, and leading our what we call strategy and technology team in the US. And that's mainly focusing on everything around the e-mobility value chain, from raw material extraction to recycling, working with the industry as well, and let's say on OEM level, on the supplier level, and for investment companies as a technical advisor. We have a global team which is involved in, let's say, the e-mobility transition since 2007, since Mercedes in Germany started to build hybrid cars. And yeah, 250 consultants around the globe working for P3 on that topic. And yeah, as I said, very excited to be on the discussion and panel today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon. And finally, we have from Academia, Daniel Castanet, PhD at the University of Tennessee.
Danny, I'm very happy to be here as well. My name is Daniel Castanet. I'm a professor and now associate department head in the electrical engineering computer science department at the University of Tennessee. I've been here about 10 years, and my research area is power electronics, which has broad applications, but a critical one is for electric vehicles. So we look at researching advanced technologies for things like motor drives, drivetrain DC to DC, battery management system, auxiliary power supplies, wired and wireless chargers. And I've done a number of projects over the years in this area. With a large group, I have 4 colleagues here also in power electronics. I work in the EV space and about 40 graduate students. And over the last decade, we've worked with various suppliers and OEMs on different projects, either directly or collaborating through government funding in order to kind of advance technologies and transition technologies into industry related to electric vehicle.
Fantastic. So again, we're excited to have you all on the call. If there's anyone on the call that has a question, wants to reach out to these folks, please do so. Also want to encourage you to reach out. As Kian mentioned, we are partnered with the Southeast MEPs. Please feel free to reach out to your MEP in your home state. We're working closely with all of those individuals and can connect you on various levels for any of your concerns around supply chain for EV. So first, we'll get started with just what we're hearing in the headlines over the past year or so. I would say in that there has been, while the overarching story was before that was that there was a huge push and exponential growth in the EV industry, and then we saw a flattening this year in demand. And so the questions on the table right now, and I'll let anybody that wants to go first take a shot at this. We'd like to hear from all of you and the different perspectives that you have. Where is EV now? Is it are we seeing is this a new normal where we are right now in terms of the market share that EVs have captured, or are we just pausing for more exponential growth in the future? Jeff, I'll let you go
Sure.
first.
Sure. On the US side, I think it's kind of a pause, slowdown. Simon mentioned from the European standpoint, I think our European OEMs are several years ahead of the US. So the EV programs we're working on are really all European with BMW and Volvo and Toyota in Japan. So I think the US is behind right now, but I think it's just on a pause. I don't think the actual infrastructure is totally there yet to bring on all these vehicles at one time with Volvo cars, they're going to be 100% EV in 2025. So there will be no more internal combustion vehicles coming from Volvo. So they are much more aggressive and committed than some of the US OEMs at this time.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Jeff.
So if I can add to that, from my perspective, we see a little bit of a slowdown at the moment, but that's from our perspective more a temporary shift, let's say, of the transition and not a stop. We will see rising demand and transition going forward. Yeah, I think everybody was a little bit in the industry too overexcited in the last couple of years, how fast it will be. There are obviously a lot of as well issues in the supply chain to fix in the infrastructure. But from our perspective, that's going to be solved. And with that, as well, the demand will again rising. And let's say we have, I would say, 4 different areas why this is going to happen. So first of all, global investments have been already done and started, as well from the governments, which will drive the industry. There's a lot of money out there. Not only the car makers have set ambitious targets, as well the let's say countries and regions have done that. Probably they will revert back a little bit. Maybe they will do it a little bit later, but it's not going to change completely. We see obviously China is pushing it, coming out as well with products which are competitive to ICE vehicles. And that's the last, let's say, point from our perspective. So we see an increase on step ups in technologies, overcoming, let's say, the last technical disadvantage to ICE. We will see ranges which are totally competitive and hopefully get the infrastructure there. And with that, it will just be as well nice to drive an EV.
Yeah, so I think colleagues on the panel hit on the main points that I would have talking to OEMs in the industry. That I think there's, even though there's maybe slowed growth, there's no lack of optimism around where this is going. It's just maybe a shift in the timeline. But we are kind of at a point in technology is rapidly advancing, and there are major investments needed to be made, particularly with some of the government influence around here in the U.S. where things need to be manufactured, and there's time to scale up, and there's a need to commit to certain technologies, and that can be difficult as technologies are changing really rapidly. But that being said, there's no that I've seen any indication that there is any different pathway. It's just a change in timeline. We're going this direction. This is the solution that we have for the problems that we're facing.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that from across industry, and consulting, and in the the academic world, as far as like for example, funding for EV research, funding for new consulting projects, and new opportunities for Jeff. It sounds like, although we're hearing it in the headlines, there may be a plateau that there's a strong base moving forward for EV. Okay, great. So thank you so much. Now kind of shifting gears. So again, we're the MEP, so we're really focused on the supply chain. Obviously, we want to serve OEMs. We want to get the information down to tier 2, tier 3, even suppliers, some of which may not be in the EV industry right now, but maybe thinking about it in some way, or maybe interested, listening in. How do you see the supplier landscape differ between EVs and ICE vehicles? And that you could go at that question from quite a few different angles. So happy to hear what your perspective would be on on that. And if it's okay, we'll kind of keep this order that we've got going right now with Jeff uh, telling us about what he's seeing that's happening, kind of boots on the ground in industry right now.
Yep. So I think that's a great question. And I think, as this evolves, it would be really great for a supplier to first get experience on the ICE side before moving into EV. I think the EV OEMs are really looking for experience um, in the automotive sector. So if you don't have that experience, if you don't have that experience with ICE, it's going to be a little difficult to get into EV. I think they're looking for those years of experience just dealing as an automotive supplier. Back in 2012, we started out as a tier two and then it took 3 years to become tier one. So if I had to give any advice to a supplier or wanting to be a supplier in the automotive, it would be to start out as a tier two to get credibility, to understand the requirements of being a automotive supplier first before trying to be tier one. It would be very difficult to go into a tier one opportunity in EV without having any experience with ICE as an automotive supplier. So that's the big, I guess, recommendation. Lots of opportunities on EV, but really to become a supplier in automotive, you need to have some of the ICE experience.
Okay, so it sounds like you've seen that the EV business is more difficult, more challenging, especially for uh, folks that haven't been in the automotive industry. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you speak to some of those challenges that you're seeing?
Sure. So some of the requirements of the tier one or automotive is on-time delivery. And that is when they say just in time, for example, they mean just in time. So BMW picks up at our facility at 11 o'clock a.m. At 2 o'clock, it's at their facility. At 3:30, it's on the vehicle, and 5 p.m. it's sold. So those are kind of the requirements to culture that your facility is going to have to. It's a mind shift that's not the normal um, everyday customer. That if you don't meet these requirements, you can see fines of significant fines of almost $250,000 a day for a late delivery. So those are that's just one example that it's different from the other customers that just in time and on time delivery, there's a significant financial impact if you can't meet that. And it takes some practice. It doesn't just happen overnight. And that's a great example, I think, just for a company to understand what on-time delivery really means in automotive versus a commodity, possibly a customer.
Very good. Very good. Simon?
Yeah, so definitely a great question. And first of all, totally agree. I think we see suppliers which are not coming from the automotive industry beforehand, struggling in the industry and dealing with OEMs, probably specifically with our German friends, because they are very strict. But it's not only on production side, starting earlier as well in the R&D phase, a very structured approach. You have to be on time as well with your schedule regarding delivering samples, etc. So it's even starting earlier that you have to deal with, let's say, the specifics of that industry. But on the other hand, I mean, obviously the supplier landscape for EVs will be different. We expect as well to see let's say, a consolidation on the ICE supplier landscape in the next years, coming up with growing EV demand. And let's say bringing now these new technologies in a vehicle gives suppliers a chance to grow into that area and grow in that business. Because I mean, in the ICE world, where you have players which are there from the beginning, Bosch, I don't know, 125 years in the industry, competing with these guys with their structure, with their scale from a beginning is probably pretty hard. And I think there are definitely especially regarding the new technologies, great opportunities for suppliers who will probably have not been so big in the industry to make their point and get their portion and piece of the cake. And one thing in specific, I think, what is from a technology perspective seen is that the shift towards a, let's say, IT-driven, vehicle software-driven perspective, that's a great chance because that's getting more and more important, specifically with EV and the integration of the vehicle in a full ecosystem. I think that's something what really has to be considered as well from the supply chain, that it's very digital and very software-driven business in the next years.
Very good. Simon, we'll go back to that go dive deeper in the next question. Daniel, do you have a perspective on suppliers versus OEMs? Maybe give us a little bit of insight into who you're working with. Do you work mostly with OEMs or sometimes tier ones like Bosch was mentioned, Denso, those types of companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work kind of across the spectrum there. We work sometimes directly with suppliers developing kind of future technologies. I mentioned before, with electric vehicles, the technology is advancing so rapidly that it's difficult to stay ahead. And so kind of working together with the university, we can help work on future generations of products and make sure things are staying competitive as everything advances. And then we're also working either, directly with OEMs, developing things. They'll have their internal R&D working 3 to 5 years out, and then we like to think of academia. We work further than that, 5 to 10 years out. What is this technology going to look like, and develop and prototype it and show benefit. So we'll either work directly, funded from OEMs, or oftentimes we'll be working funded from the U.S. government, the DOE Vehicle Technologies Office on developing some new technology. And we'll have partners with OEMs and suppliers looking towards OEMs advising what's really needed, what specific issues are they facing, what technology solutions do they need. And then suppliers, because we in academia, by and large, don't want to productize, right? So we were looking to take these advancements and then commercialize them through some partners. And so we work, kind of across the spectrum there.
Great. If we got time, we'll try to get back to that. I'd love to hear more about the fascinating dynamic between how innovation comes from the OEMs down or from suppliers up. Always love to hear about that. So Simon, I'll go next to you since Jeff had to step away for a second, but wanted to dive deeper. You were saying that there's quite a bit of opportunity in the EV space and specifically in the realm of digital development, connected technology. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, what's obviously already today a vehicle is a driving computer. But with EVs, this, let's say, software-driven vehicle architecture is becoming more important because driving an EV, and whoever has done it, it's only convenient if you have that integration. It has to tell you when you have to charge. It's preparing your vehicle to get charged as well. If you're in a Tesla, it will tell you exactly where you have to do that. It's warming up the battery up front. This, let's say, optimization of the vehicle will going forward be more important. So more and more components of the vehicle will be, from our perspective as well, integrated in that, let's say, IT system of the vehicle. And with that, we will as well see new solutions and new use cases which are enforced by IT and software solutions. And with that, I think that's a good opportunity, because looking at the supplier landscape, I think you have to find, and that's a little bit as well what Jeff said in the beginning, you have to find first your sweet spot where you can start with. Obviously, it's always as well a very capital intense step to go into EV. So you have to find your niche first, get your name out there, and then grow from there instead of directly jump and be big. And that's from our perspective as well. Coming, let's say, via technology, because you have to somehow as well differentiate from the market to be accepted then from the larger players as a supplier.
Yeah. So I can kind of go see where you're going with digital being an opportunity for software developers. Is there also a hardware opportunity in the digital transformation?
Yeah, so I mean, as well, more and more components in the vehicle will be somehow integrated in this IT system of the vehicle to allow, I don't know, the classic things, proactive maintenance, etc. So it's as well, hardware suppliers should always think about how to as well be part of the IT system vehicle, probably not directly as well seen from a end user perspective, but as well from a how the vehicle itself functioning and managed.
Very good. Very good. Thanks, Simon. Jeff, so we're diving a bit deeper on challenges. You gave some really great examples of challenges. We're also just reviewing the biggest opportunities that you see moving forward, specifically for your company. Can you speak to that? Either dive deeper into the challenges like the
Sure.
just in time, or talk about some of the opportunities, the biggest opportunities that you see coming through the
Sure.
pipeline.
Sure, I like to talk about both. So when it looked like I stepped away, I was trying to answer a couple questions in the chat. So Rhonda asked a question about the financial. Can I give a little more insight? And I think the piece to really understand is you could be put out of business very quickly with some of these delays. You are impacting the OEM's revenue stream. So, for example, every 60 seconds, a vehicle is coming off the assembly line. So, if we use a number of $60,000 a minute of revenue, that's why they're saying that, hey, we're going to impact you $250,000 per hour. So that was a question Rhonda asked. I try to be a little more clear for her on that one. And then Barbara Williams asked about IATF. So IATF 16949, that's one of the challenges. And NC State IES, they really helped us prepare for that certification, as well as the ISO 14001 for environmental. Those two certifications are really a requirement of the license to even participate in the automotive ICE or EV. So I wanted to answer those questions, but I think some of the biggest challenges is getting those certifications. Those certifications take time, resources, and it can be very expensive. So it might take 18 to 24 months to get one of those certifications, and you need both of those to really participate in the automotive as a tier one. Some of the biggest opportunities I'm going to say is materials and lightweight and sustainability. So with these EV vehicles, the weight of the vehicle is very important. So, with the ice, it was always miles per gallon that someone would look at, a consumer would look at, but now it's how many hours you can drive this vehicle without having to stop, the inconvenience of charging. One way to extend the miles is to have a lighter material, sustainable material. So for someone who's looking for opportunities, those are opportunities to present to suppliers. Hey, I have a lighter material, a stronger material, a sustainable material. For example, we are now blending hemp, the fibers into plastic to make the vehicle lighter, but it's stronger because of the fibers. So a consumer can drive their vehicle instead of from here to 200 miles, they can possibly get 500 miles before they have to charge up. So that's a big opportunity for a supplier. Hopefully, I answered challenges and opportunities as well. Okay.
Very good, Jeff. And from what I understand, that is a great opportunity because EVs, if I understand correctly, are about 50% heavier. Is that right? Than an ICE vehicle. So quite a
That's
bit of
right.
opportunity for lightweighting there.
That's right.
Daniel, can you speak to what you're seeing as opportunities, and feel free to, nothing's off the table. We can talk hydrogen or anything you want to.
Yeah, sure. And I certainly defer to Simon and Jeff's expertise as the resident academic on the panel. But I think there's this really big challenge, and I'll kind of frame it as both the challenge and the opportunity with the amount of additional technology coming into the electric vehicle, right? So there's a need to move into advanced electronics for a lot of applications, but at the same time, as Simon was mentioning, it's kind of going to be everywhere and incorporated into every component, and so there's a lot of opportunities in different locations to be doing some development there. And there is, I mentioned before, rapidly advancing technology and a lot of competing solutions, and we see OEMs and manufacturers making their bets on what those are going to be, and a willingness to consider different solutions for major components. So there's kind of maybe a wider variety of places to enter the market because we are incorporating intelligence into so many more places. And then even back to the first question of this panel about the viability of the market, and as some of these metrics for growth have changed, hopefully we've all convinced you that that's not a concern. But even if you haven't, a lot of these more intelligent systems are going to be incorporated into every vehicle in the future, right? So, I mean, even if there is some concern, and this is sticking with future ICE vehicles, they're going to become more intelligent. They're going to become more electrified in their internal systems to incorporate that intelligence regardless. And then the last thing I would say that Jeff just touched on, but this idea of, with a lot of the motivations for electric vehicles and government regulations being around environmental, there's the, post-use kind of whole economy that is in development now. And I see, Europe is really the leader in this, but as we have these large battery packs, what happens to them after, the 10-year warranty or whatever the OEM is incorporating? And there's a lot of opportunities there. I think there's going to be increasing government regulations and need to account for that, whether that's second use or disposal and the markets that pop up around those. There's a lot of opportunity to get ahead of the game on the use of both the battery packs and the various materials that are going into these advanced components in electric vehicles after their life as an electric vehicle.
Thank you, Daniel. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the requirements. Jeff everyone's touched on this a bit. And I will say, IATF, if you're interested in that, learning more about those requirements, this would be an example of a perfect conversation for your local MEP in the Southeast, who can step you through every step of that process, right? So just diving a little bit deeper, Jeff, maybe you've touched on it already. So maybe just more on what you've seen as the different requirements between your OEMs or your customers, maybe from Europe versus the U.S. Domestic suppliers? Any thoughts on those differences in requirements?
Sure. So I think one of the differences is our customers are more interested today in the environmental impact that we have as a supplier. So it's not just, at one time, dumping into a lake, but now they're more concerned with our suppliers, how many miles they have to drive to deliver. So we had to really look for new suppliers instead of coming from 200 miles away. We had to find suppliers that were coming from maybe 50 miles away to reduce the carbon footprint. So that's something that a supplier or a potential supplier needs to be looking at. Those things are monitored, measured, and you have to put together what they call a scope 3. And this is really looking at how you're helping to reduce the carbon footprint. So it's very important that we have suppliers now that are locally based, so they are not driving as many miles and impacting the environment. And we also have to look at renewable energy. So that's very important to our customers. Right now we have about 3% core technology using about 3% renewable energy. So because we use so much energy, kilowatt hours, we have to find other ways. And we don't have windmills yet, and we don't have solar panels yet. But our customers are asking us to put a plan together, for 2025, how we're going to increase our renewable energy for year 2030. So those are things that requirements that are going to be our European customers are asking that, but the US are going to be asking that as well. They're just a few years behind, but you have to have a plan how you're going to reduce the carbon footprint 20 to 30%, your emissions.
That's a great point to bring up, Jeff. Thanks so much. That can get lost in the shuffle, so that's great.
Right.
Simon, any other thoughts?
Yeah, so adding up to that, so I think what we had earlier in the discussion, first of all, whoever is new to the industry from a supplier perspective, obviously you have to follow all the established processes around ISO, TS certification, etc., to be accepted as a supplier. But correct, the next big things are, and if you're looking at the announcements from the OEMs as well, obviously the first announcements are around when they want to become when they want to have a 100% EV portfolio. But then the next step is that they already announcing when they want to become CO2 neutral as well from the production side. And that's then obviously being transferred to the supply chain. I think Daimler is one of the first ones. I think they announced 2040 to be CO2 neutral. And that means as well, supplier have to look at their CO2 footprint from their production. They have to look at renewable energy, how to use that. We will obviously see an increase in energy storage solar system, which are used very regional than at a factory. So that's something different, definitely very important. And then in addition, increasing let's say emphasis on being able to track the materials in a vehicle. So in Europe, you now have to already make sure that you are 100% clear where your material, even in your battery pack, is coming from. So you can literally follow every single tiny lithium particle in your cell. And that is going to be as well very important in the next years. So that, value chains are very transparent and can be followed to the last piece of the puzzle.
That's fascinating. would love to dive in more on that one, but for the sake of time, we better keep going. Daniel, do you have any other thoughts on this one? OEM requirements?
So, to the base requirements as we look at future technology, there's the obvious, there's a need for best-in-class kind of swap C, size, weight, and power with cost integrated in there. And now I'm talking about obviously kind of some of the work we do in powertrain components. We're looking at everything needs to be lightweight, highly efficient, highly performant, and low cost. But then there's also, we've been seeing a lot of emphasis on the integration into not just one system, but potentially multiple systems. We need to be generating things that are kind of low noise and low impact on electrical systems around them. And as the vehicle becomes increasingly electrified, there are these problems with EMI and noise electrical systems that occur. And so now everything has to be designed so that it is quiet and able to be integrated in without affecting all of the sensitive electronics that are now everywhere in the vehicle. And then recently we've been seeing an emphasis on modularity of being having a solution that can be deployed at different levels across different types of EVs as the kind of range of EVs expands. Got things like from fleet to traditional cars and SUVs and electrified trucks. The kind of electronics needed for those, particularly anything in the powertrain, is at a completely different scale. And can we have a solution that scales with it and design that in so that we can be deploying across this powertrain at different levels? And a new, unique requirement.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So I think that it's real, a takeaway, lightweighting, just thinking about EVs as, what are the big differences, lightweighting, and then what you just mentioned there, a focus on vibration reduction, noise reduction, tolerances for any rotating part has to be dramatically more stringent. All right, so let's go on to our favorite topic, collaboration, partnerships. What's happening? I'm probably behind in the news on this. There's so many partnerships. That's probably a big part of the EV industry, right? You're buying a you're buying a Honda car, but it's got a Chevy chassis, right? For the sake of time, we'll just try to just anybody can jump in here because we do want to leave some time for questions. But any thoughts on the partnerships that you're seeing and how that might be important to think about if you're a supplier?
Yeah, I'll jump in first if that's okay. One of the big changes we've seen is we're working very closely with Clemson University for their data collection. We're working with Brightma Farms, who are in Charleston, South Carolina, where they're actually growing the hemp. But I think these partnerships we didn't have these 3 to 5 years ago. We would just buy resin from a supplier and move forward. But now we have to be innovative. And I think innovation's a key. You have to find a supply chain that makes you innovative and you're offering something that you're not just a me too. But Clemson University, iCar, we don't have time to do the data collection. We produce parts and now we send the parts to them to determine, hey, yes, this part is lighter. Yes, it's physically stronger. It can take this type of load. And then when we are able to present that to our customer is pleased because they didn't have to go through that data collection, the testing. And quite honestly, we didn't have to do it either. We don't have the resources. We don't have the time to do that. So we have to be much more strategic. And I think moving forward, as Simon said, there's be much more transparency in the supply chain. But we have to look for partners who can help us move faster and we have to be intentional and strategic.
Wow, that's another conversation that I'd like to dig deeper on, and it probably would take an hour just to scratch the surface there. So that's fascinating. Any other thoughts on collaboration and partnership?
Yeah, so my take on that is So EV industry and the ramp up of that, very capital intense. So you need a lot of resources. The speed of innovation will even increase. Probably not be able to handle that as a single supplier or player. And then as well, let's say global partnerships to have a local presence in, let's say, more regions as well as something we see. And we have already seen partnerships coming up, which I guess nobody would have expected 5 years ago. We have Daimler Trucks and Cummins and Packard building a cell manufacturing site. Daimler Trucks and Volvo starting a partnership to come up with their own software for trucks. Ford and VW building a partnership to share platforms, Stellantis and Daimler. So I think we see a lot of partnerships which we could, as I said, probably would have not expected a couple of years ago, just to make sure to be part of the game and can handle the investments which have to be made, and as well, let's say, bringing or accelerating innovation, which is, from my perspective, always a partnership thing. And what I feel in the industry when I'm talking to people, that the willingness to partner is way higher than a couple of years ago. It's more a together than a against each other.
And let me just say I'm really happy that Jeff brought up academia, because of course I'm going to pitch the value of collaborating with academia in this space.
Sure.
But in addition to kind of the applications like Jeff mentioned, you know, these user facilities and helping with testing and data collection, you know, collaborative research to develop new products and to keep advancing technologies. And then working together with academia to be able to go after government funding, both kind of with a supplier going after SBIR, STTR type funding in order to help develop and fund the development of new products. Or, you know, academics are doing this all the time, getting on one of these larger proposals with an OEM as the commercialization partner, so that as these new technologies are being researched and developed, they can be handed off and go out there and actually get manufactured. And then the last piece, I would say, the value of collaborating with academia is access to students and future employees, and developing a pipeline at perhaps a local university of people who are trained in the relevant technology areas to your industry, who come out and graduate and can be picked up and hired straight into your workforce.
Thanks, Daniel. Just fascinating conversation, guys. Thank you so much. We've got just 10 more minutes, so I want to leave a little bit of time in case we have some burning questions from the audience. So just one last question here before we hand it over to Kian to do the Q&A. So, you know, we've talked about product development, lightweighting. We've talked about collaborating with supply chain partners. We talked about the need for capital investment. Where would you get started if you were to say you're a supplier that's not in EV right now? What do you do? Who do you call? What's the strategy to get started?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that question, because I wish someone would have given me this advice probably 12 years ago, is start out as a tier 2 or tier 3 supplier and look for tier 1s that are selling directly to the OEMs. I happened to be an engineer 20 years ago at Tyco Electronics, so they were a tier 1 supplier to BMW and others. But being a tier 2 gives you an opportunity to build up credibility. You know, Simon said something early that some OEMs can be difficult to work with, but they want to see your financials every quarter. And it takes time to build up that credibility. And as a tier 2, you're not going to be asked to show financials quarterly. As a tier 1, you are. So the best advice, I probably spent 2 years trying to become a tier 1 initially, and we couldn't do it. And my advice would be start out as a tier 2, tier 3, build up credibility. You'll get opportunities eventually because other tier 2s or other tier 1s are going to run into problems, quality, financials, and you will get an opportunity. You continually deliver on time, don't have delays, you will get an opportunity. So the best advice I can say is partner with a tier 1, start out as a tier 2, and learn the requirements of an automotive supplier.
Awesome advice. Thanks so much, Jeff. Simon, Daniel, any last
Sure.
thoughts before we turn it over?
Yeah, make your homework first. Make sure you are clear on where you're good at, where are your capabilities, and how this can be used in the EV value chain. And I think it's important, Jeff just said, start as a tier 2. Look at the vehicle, most of the money, and from a BOM cost perspective as well, the biggest part is the battery and the battery cells and the powertrain. Though that's definitely something you should look at, how you participate in that. And then there, let's say, the cell manufacturers and pack manufacturers will play a very significant role in the transition, being very strong just because of their sheer size. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to be part of the value chain because these guys are looking for local sources, for regional sources, to get rid of a super complex global supply chain.
Very good. Thanks, Simon. Daniel?
No, no modifications. Simon and Jeff are the experts on this one. I'm only gonna look at what they say.
All right. Well, good. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to turn it over to Kian. Kian, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this, and I'll let you take over from here.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm just going to bring up, while we're just going through the questions, bring up the slide for the contact information for our panelists. But Susan, you and Cynthia have been monitoring the chat and the questions. Have we received any so far?
We do have a couple on the Q&A.
Okay.
First person is from David. He specializes in shipping and logistics, sending repair parts worldwide. Wants to know how they can get involved in assisting in the movement of the many parts needed globally.
I'll try to answer that. So there are trade shows, and we were at one this past Monday. Toyota has one in Detroit next week. Actually, October 30th. BMW had one 2 months ago, but they have these trade shows where they're actually looking for suppliers. And that's when you are able to visit other existing suppliers. They'll have a trade booth and you can really tell what your capabilities are. So, if you look on the internet for these trade shows for automotive suppliers, they're going on now, probably one every 2 months just in the US. But it would be great if you could meet, and it might be a tier 2 opportunity there also with DHL. We use a company, Benor for BMW, Hertz. They are looking for tier 2 suppliers. So I would say look for these trade shows and get out there.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
Susan, are there any other questions?
That looks like the last one, but if we want to give folks another minute or two, again, you can use the Q&A button to ask your questions, please. Thank you, Jamie. Jamie says, great presentation, thanks. Let's see. Let's get in here. Asking for email contacts for the panelist. Is that something we can do?
Yes, we should be able to do so. They're in the QR codes and the links on their names in the presentation, which we're going to send out, that will have that information as well. And of course, mine and Eric's and Danny's and Dean's contact information will be in the presentation as well. And you can send any inquiries to us and we'll make sure they get to where they need to go, both to the panelists and to the other MEP Center contacts.
Thank you to Stephen for your comment. He said, thank you. Lots of good information. All right. And David, thank you. Fabulous webinar. Great job, everyone. Thank you. So lots of nice comments. We appreciate those.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if we don't have any further questions, then we can give you back 3 whole minutes of your time so that you can get on with the rest of your day and everything else that you have on your to-do list for our panelists and everyone in attendance. So, but we want to thank you for attending this. Like I said, it was our first webinar in this series on EVs. We have a few more planned. Again, if you have questions, reach out. We'll be happy to direct your question to the panelists or to the appropriate person to answer it. Any question? And thank you and have a great day.